Thank you, Dr. Kyle. So shall I share the screen?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Yeah. I hope it is visible.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, great. So thank you once again, Dr. Kyle, for the nice words. Actually, we have planned this session maybe a little bit earlier, but due to various constraints, I was not able to get a date. So that's the reason why we have done it in this month. And it's really a pleasure to talk to all of you regarding this particular topic, AI and data science for innovation. So before I jump into the talk, I'll say a few things about the institute where I belong, just for a minute. So this is IIIT Kottayam, and it's a fully residential campus. And right now we have UG courses, PG courses, and also PhD program. And just like NITs and IITs, this was established in the year 2015 by Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India. And within a short span of time, we have kind of grown into this level. So we have established MOU with many prominent IT industries, as well as many premier international institutes which are within the top 50 QS ranking. And also we have a very flagship program, which is MTech for working professionals, where we deliver this particular course to working professionals from the IT industry, which includes both product-based companies as well as, service-based companies. And in addition to that, we also have PhD candidates from the industry. And also we have various industrial joint projects, which includes from companies like Microsoft, Bell, Volkswagen, etc. Just to show you a glimpse of the campus. So, and also one good thing is that, like, especially if you take our UG program, majority of our students are from Andhra and Telangana. So it's always a pleasure to deliver a particular talk in such an institution. So, and also we have a very vibrant data science research group over here at IIIT Kottayam. We have around 12 to 13 faculty who are working with data science and AI. So it's a group called Data Science Research Group of IIIT Kottayam. And moving on to what I'm expected to do for this session. So basically, this is the overall or a kind of not exactly agenda, I can say a kind of overview about what I'm going to do. So right from the topic, or right from the title, you would have understood today it's hardly not possible to kind of estimate the importance of artificial intelligence in the corporate world. So you have thousands of businesses evolve each year, and it kind of dive into this never-ending competition for customer approval or generating money, all this thing. So basically, this race becomes as exquisite as ever before, and placing AI technologies at the kind of a pedestal of generating innovative, generating innovative competitive advantages, right? So you, as per various studies, I'm not going to quote any specific thing, but you can say that most of the companies are able to increase their corporate profits even till 60%. So we couldn't name any other business revenue or technology which can boost with this kind of result. So ultimately, given that businesses must use data to improve services or to increase productivity or increase sales, ultimately, everyone will agree with me that data science has become interwoven into everything we do right now, as well as to the future. So the essential word here is future, and by extension, I mean to say that it's a future technology. Right? So right now, we know that for the next 15, 20 years, definitely AI and data science, it is going to thrive here. That's the reason why you have various institutes offering UG and PG programs in AI and data science. Because earlier we had only computer science, but now you have degrees which is being offered in these subdomains as well. So that is the significance and that is the relevance of AI and data science, right? So especially because of the pandemic. If the last 18, 19 months, if you observe, uh, you can notice that definitely a lot of change has happened because of these kind of everything becoming online, and there are a lot of digital disruption has happened, right? So ultimately, one point you will agree with me that like there is a lot of significance for these two keywords, AI and data science. So what I plan to do is I'll try to give you a big picture of how exactly you can make use of data science and be an entrepreneur, or how do you actually kind of face these challenges in data science, and what are the common things, right? And also I'll try to draw a line between like how what is academic research and how it is different from entrepreneurship, and how it is kind of related, right? All these things I'll try to cover in the next 1 hour or so, right? So, and to be on a more quiet level, this is the agenda. We'll start with something like what exactly is innovation, and how data science and AI is related to that. What exactly is a product development process, and also how this entrepreneurship and analytics is related, and also what exactly is entrepreneurship in AI and data science looks like. And all these things maybe theoretically looks very fancy, but what is the reality, right? So that also we'll see towards the end, right? So just to begin this, I'll pitch in with a little statistics, right? So if you observe here, I have given some keywords in Google, and I've just listed like how many results you are getting, right? So this basically just gives you a priority of what data says and what is important to us, or how we see data and how we see the relevance of things that are really required in life, right? So it's very interesting to kind of analyze something from this kind of results, right? So if you notice here, innovation, the keyword innovation, if you Google, you are getting more than uh, 2 billion, 2 billion and 210 million results, right? But if you go for data science, you are getting more than that. You have around 3 billion, 3 billion 90 million, right? But artificial intelligence, if you are going, you are getting only 1 billion 60 million. Maybe if I have tried with AI, maybe you would have got more. But anyway, but ultimately, the last one, if you observe COVID prevention, you're noticing it. We started hearing this word maybe in the last 20 or 21 months only, right? But the research results, it shows that you have 4 billion 970 million. That is the result, right? So definitely, this clearly tells that uh, whatever innovation is do or we do, definitely there is a necessity behind that. Because right now, our necessity is to find some prevention for COVID, right? So ultimately, if I'm clubbing these three or these four keywords, definitely there are a lot of relation between these two. So that I'll try to convey in this talk, right? So moment we talk about innovation, definitely innovation is a kind of global priority. At least some of you would have heard about this United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or more popularly known as SDGs, right? So every company or every responsible company in the world should be having one or more of these goals being met. So the number 9, if you observe here, right? So the one you see here, that actually clearly tells innovation is a very, very important goal for every company, for every organization that exists in this world, right? And they should be aware that they are contributing, how they are contributing negatively or positively to one or more of these things in this innovation, or in this chart, whatever I have shown here, right? So ultimately, uh, innovation is something that we should develop new. That is the easy part, and developing something new that is useful is not the easy part, right? So it's always the hard part in innovation, right? So you might be aware of patents. One of the key elements to grant a patent is how do you look at the utility. So new and useful, and it's very easy to come up with something new. And if you look at the other way, there is always an opportunity to innovate. Then definitely there is a, which means that there is a problem to solve, right? So something to could be improved, right? So most of the time when students come to us, like they say like we already these things are there, then what should I do? So for that, I'll just put an example from a non-computer science perspective. Imagine that you go to a supermarket, you can find at least 20 to 30 different kinds of toothpaste, right? So once out of curiosity, I tried to count it. I got the answer to be 28. There are 28 different kinds of toothpaste, right? So why should we need 28 different kinds of toothpaste? Why can't we have just one? So the point which I'm trying to convey here is that you may find certain things useful, but may not be found useful by say a particular person, say Mr. X or Mr. Y, or someone else, right? So everyone will be looking for some usefulness. That so whatever we think useful may not be kind of that much useful to another person, right? So that is the basic reason why for the same utility you have different products. So for the existing opportunity, you have kind of different solutions. So, or another example, you take the case of a like solutions for eradicating or keeping out mosquitoes. You have different kinds of solution to that. You have a mosquito coil, or you have the electric one, or nowadays you have a band where you just put it here and it won't come, or else you can have a cream, right? Or there are a lot of things, or you have this electronic thing, right? So, or sometimes you even have the ultrasonic technology which can eliminate mosquitoes, right? So in one way or the other one, these all things are useful, right? But these electric things, if I'm going to a hiking trip or if I'm going to a forest, I may not be able to use a power socket in these scenarios. So then obviously from that only people would have thought about a cream or a band which you can put it on in your hand, right? So ultimately, always there is some necessity. So based on that, you can always come up with some solution. So always these kind of say something which is useful only to a certain section of the people, or certain in certain aspects you may not be able to use that product. So that you can see that as an opportunity, right? So ultimately, every solution that comes up as new is addressing a very good opportunity which is not addressed, which when we address could be useful, right? So that's the way the value of innovation becomes important, and that has a lot of deriving value, right? So because definitely people will buy, or people with money definitely will, you can decide what to buy and what not to buy, right? So as long as that is there, definitely you can uh, keep this innovation thing open, and only thing is you need to find a good problem. That is the only thing. Finding the solution is always a secondary thing, right? Now, how this is related to data science, or why we are talking about uh, this one in a data science perspective, right? So if you just think about 20 years back, any office you go, you will find a something called a typewriter, right? Now you can't find a typewriter in any of the offices. Even if it is there, it is even sometimes used as a kind of antique or showpiece, right? So ultimately, all of you will agree with me that to champion data literacy, that is a kind of need of the hour, right? So definitely the last 20 years, if you think, everyone were behind computer literacy, but like definitely the next 20 years is going to be all about uh, data literacy or analytics literacy, because there are a lot of statistics which says that like by 2021, at the end of 2021, you may have around 50% of the organization maybe lacking sufficient AI and data skills to achieve this required business value, right? So definitely data and literacy in data analytics, that has got huge opportunities in the coming years, right? So when you are clubbing these two things together, both data science and AI, and then innovation, how it is going to kind of evolve, right? So for that, let me just show you it's some of the visible aspects of AI and data science. So you can see the photographs listed on the slide, right, from 2014 to 2020. One thing which is common across all these photographs, whatever that is shown in the slide, is that none of these photographs are of real people. I repeat, none of them are of real people. Rather, they were created by a computer based on an algorithm, a kind of broad description given to a computer. So based on that, it was trained, right? And then it was kind of generated. Right? So if you look at a photograph of 2014, maybe that is a little grainy, and as it is, as you're moving to the right, obviously the that fuzziness is actually reducing. So basically, this picture demonstrates a kind of the options available. Like you can even create realistic photographs of human faces. They are so real looking, and in fact, it is fair to call these results even as remarkable. So this result received a lot of media attention, and so these face generations were actually trained on celebrity examples, meaning that there are elements of existing celebrities in the generated faces, making them seem familiar but not quite real, right? So in addition to that, maybe you can even think about apps like Face App, right? So that everyone was interested to see how they look like when they are 70 years old, when they're 60 years old. How do you look if I'm if I have a bald head? How do I look? So in different ways, people wanted to see how this actually how you actually look after some years, right? So uh, along with that, let me also tell you, so usually uh, when we are comparing organizations, including education institutions or corporate organizations, always people try to choose one or the other. Like there might be something valuable in one institute, which is not so much in the other one, right? So because in academicians, we need to understand there's a difference between research and innovation. So if I'm just borrowing the words of Dr. Jeff Nicholson from the company 3M, he says that research converts money into knowledge. So which means that I fund a project, I get a project, I spend some energy, and I study something and come up with a thesis or a report, and then tells me or then tell the world how to do things differently. Or if you think about from any other domain's perspective, you are developing some new material, a carbon composite material, or a new process, right? Or which was not existing earlier, right? So a lot of things happen in the research, but innovation is quite the opposite. That is, it converts this knowledge into money, right? So let me give you an example. So think about Thomas Alva Edison, who came up with the bulb, right? Even a century back, right? So already at that time, before even Edison discovered a bulb, there were a lot of research which showed that when a thin wire, you take a thin wire, pass constantly current through that, it becomes red hot, and hence it glows and emits light, right? So that's a new information, and they had at that time. But you cannot give everybody a piece of wire uh, if they want light, so that they can hold it and the current goes through that and it becomes red. So Edison used that knowledge to make a product called electric bulb, right? And that bulb, what he could sell in hundreds and millions of and in hundreds and millions, and was actually behind the creation of companies like Philips or GE, and they started on that, and what they became, what they are today, right? So research converts money into this kind of knowledge, but innovation converts this knowledge into money. So what does businesses do in the context of an Ericsson or a Volvo or a Philips or a GE or a Microsoft? While research adds to the body of knowledge, innovation adds value of intellectual property, and obviously businesses scale them and make more money out of it. So that's about innovation. So if you think about innovation, it is not something which has just happened, right? You can see long waves of innovation, and there are multiple instances if you observe, right? So any wave you take, whether it is a first wave or second wave, creative destruction plays a important role in entrepreneurship and economic development, right? So that is a theory in economics, right? So if you think about the earlier 19th century, railways completely reshaped the urban demographics and trade at that time. So similarly, if you look into the fifth wave and sixth wave, right? So in these things, the internet disrupted the entire industries, right, from media to retail to e-commerce, everything, right? So basically, this infographic shows you how innovation cycles have impacted economies right from the say 1785 till today. Right? So if you think about earlier, you had textiles, water power in the industrial revolution during the first wave. Right? So if you observe these waves, whatever you see in the fifth one and sixth one, it is going to prolong pretty long. right? When compared to, see, for example, third wave, if you think, third wave actually dominated the first half of early 1900s, right? So it is at that point the great Henry Ford introduced the Model T, and he started talking about assembly line, which kind of transformed the whole auto industry, right? Automobile became closely linked with the expansion of many developed countries, right? So later in the fourth revolution or fourth wave, you can think about aviation, which had kind of completely changed the barriers of time, right? If you want to travel from one place to the other one, right? And then, as I mentioned earlier, both the sixth wave and the fifth wave, they are kind of marked with AI and digitization across, say, IoT, robotics, drones. So, like, it is kind of entirely painting a new picture. So if you think about automation systems or predictive analytics or data processing, it could definitely, it is going to make a lot of impact. So because whatever you see, all the physical goods and service, what you see, are everything are likely to be digitalized. So the time to complete these tasks, that it can vary right from few seconds to few hours to even some seconds only. And another aspect, as you can see, as this clean technology, right? So now itself we can understand, or we can see how the domination of electrical vehicle is going to happen in the next 5-6 years. So there are long waves of innovation happening, and definitely AI and data science are going to play a crucial part in this way of innovation, right? So why I say that, if you take an example of this Jishugu National Park in China's Sichuan province. So this is a very interesting park. So in the earlier 2010 to 2015, what they have done is they have uh, converted this particular park in such a way that it can encourage sustainable ecotourism, right? So what they have done is they have kind of fairly advanced and disciplined approach to park management, and it was kind of difficult to do it manually. So what this management of this particular national park, what they have done is they have come up with a solution which is very digital and very smart, and they were one of the very first project which made use of this big data when this concept was in the kind of in the very early stages. So, obviously, it is really interesting how they have balanced the conservation and development at the same time to attain the sustainability. Right? So, which means that some of the outcomes of this project was that the status of the park would be visible to any person at any time. That is, it is kind of visualizable. So, with real-time views of the crowd flow, or the distribution, or kind of quantifiable analysis, right? How many tourists are right now in this position or in this location? How do you control the crowd, right? So all these things can be very easily managed. So in these way, it would definitely enable better management of tourists, better management of tour buses, then like whatever indigenous communities which are inside this national park, for them also it will help them a lot, because ultimately your aim is to have a goal of low carbon, and which leads to this sustainable development, right? So what I'm trying to say is basically using this data science and innovation, a lot of things are happening right now, right? So I know it's a pretty hard time to listen to a talk in the afternoon. So I thought I will have to take a very quick 1 minute break. Just move your eyes away from the screen. Just think about what we have discussed now. We talked about significance of data science and how it is related to innovation, right? So all right. So definitely more than ever before, today's business environment is rapidly changing than it was maybe some decades ago, right? Because if you see maybe 10 or 15 years, nobody would have thought that an office could work without the actual space, office space, right? But now it is definitely possible, right? So basically, this is mainly due to the increasing technological advancement, and also globalization is also another aspect, right? So ultimately, in order to survive and stay competitive, all these industry giants, they give priority to new product development. Usually, we call it as NPD, and this is kind of directly related to innovation, right? So many new products which they internally develop, they witness high failure rates. So obviously, maybe 40% of the new products are estimated to fail at launch, right? So even after all the development and testing work, out of every 7 to 10 new product concepts, only one is a commercial success. That's what statistics about innovation says, right? And also, if you think about all these digital technology, they're definitely transforming the nature and the scope of this whole entrepreneurship activity, right? So ultimately, we can think that AI are kind of enabling machines to process this large data, and also maybe they may be using all these complex algorithms, and usually that requires human intelligence or human assistance, right? So ultimately, using this, you can actually kind of predict what is the consequence, or what does will it bring mass unemployment, or will it increase levels of inequality. All this can be analyzed, right? So there are a lot of research which is going with respect to responsible AI, but I'm not going into that aspect. But one thing I can say is that unlike traditional computer programs in which you have a fixed pre-programmed instructions, AI systems, they have the capacity to learn, right? So being from either from electrical or computer science background, definitely these things everybody knows, right? So ultimately, you will be able to kind of require a domain knowledge of a particular uh, domain, and ultimately you require data, and then you might be able to start analyzing the patterns, or do some predictions from this data, right? So ultimately, whenever we think about these things, these are the positive sides of AI. And how do you actually think about a new product, right? How do you actually do that, right? So how do you say something is new and how it is kind of different, right? So attempt at defining what is and what is not, what is and what not is a new product is not an easy task, both for academicians and also for this industry practitioners, right? So many students, especially UG students, they have much fun when you argue, like, what is actually different from this product when you're comparing this, right? Sometimes you can find uh, certain things. Just imagine the Apple iPhone. It is so expensive, like maybe even now also it is expensive, but later, if you think about companies like OnePlus, the same features they have bought in with a reduced cost, and they projected saying that this is a premier phone with all the features of this Apple. Right? So, in some ways, sometimes it is really arguable, or it is a kind of debatable topic whether something is really unique in a certain product or not. Right? So, one may ask whether that perception of different packaging for the existing product, can I call it as a new product? Surely the answer can be yes as well as no. It all depends on what exactly you are looking. Right? So maybe you can say a new packaging coupled with additional marketing effort, especially in terms of marketing and communication, can help to kind of reposition a product. Right? So ultimately, for example, if you are changing the performance capabilities of a product from a non-computer science thing, if I'm saying like I have an improved washing detergent, right? So definitely that is definitely improving the capability. Or if you're thinking about changing the application advice for the product, say for example, if you're thinking about certain kinds of something called Persil balls in washing machine, if you think, which will clean the fabric in a much better way. So that was a that maybe that initially people never knew this can be applied for this, right? Or else if you think about changing the after sales service of a product, that completely depends. If you're thinking about a car, the frequency of service for a motor car, right? Or sometimes changing the promoted image of a product. You would have seen this green image in refill packs saying that it is environment friendly. That's the reason why we are charging this much. Or else, if you think about any chargers, say an Apple charger, if you take, they have embedded some technology into that so that these things are biodegradable, which means that after some point it starts disintegrating on its own. So maybe from a customer perspective, we need to spend that money and again buy that. But what the company is saying is we have made it environment friendly, right? So it's a kind of promoted image saying that we are very sustainable and we are kind of doing it for the earth, right? Now, or else changing the availability of the product. You can do mass productions and obviously it can become cheaper, right? So that is related to the last one. So ultimately, when you think about new products and new product development, this is all a customer thinks about, or this is all the perspective you can think about. So ultimately, this new product, the NPD, always consists of activities that lead to a stream of a new or a changed product or a market offering over a time, right? So this includes generation of opportunities or how it is selected, or transformation into new manufactured product, or activities offered to, or services offered to customers. All this thing belong to that. So in a nutshell, I can say that this is how usually any in innovation, if you're seeing, this is how usually anything is being pitched, right? So you might be facing a lot of ideas, and from that you shortlist one particular idea, right? So when I say idea generation, it refers to the kind of systematic search for new product ideas. So typically companies generate hundreds of ideas, maybe even thousands, or a handful of good ones at the end, right? So maybe imagine that you had two new ideas was identified. The first was an kind of internal thing, and the company decided to kind of fund it internally, and the other one was from the contribution from its employee, and it was put as an R&D project, right? So basically out of this right now, maybe even the company doesn't know which one is going to click and which the other one not, because even if you do all these analysis, as I mentioned, out of all these things, only very handful may reach this commercialization stage, right? So usually, even though this idea screening happens, it's nothing else rather than it's only filtering of these ideas to pick the good ones. And after that, as you go to this NPD process, you need attractive ideas which can be developed into a product concept, right? So ultimately, a product concept is a detailed version of this new product idea, which need to be stated in a meaningful consumer terms, right? So imagine that a car manufacturer that has developed an AI-based touch screen which can do things as per the electrical signals from your brain, right? So the idea has passed the idea screening, and now it could be developed into a concept, right? So the marketer's task is to develop this new product into like alternative product concepts that then the company can find out how attractive each concept is to customers, and they can choose the best one. So if you're thinking about this kind of an interface or a gadget, so which can take the signals from your brain, and accordingly it can automatically do these things, right? So then obviously you need to the position of that particular gadget, where it should be kept. So for that itself you can have different concepts, right? So usually concept testing is done with a group of target customers, and this can be presented either symbolically or physically to the customer and do a small survey, right? And then usually you go for this marketing strategy, right? Whether introducing this new product, how it is going to be, whether it is going to be really needed by the customer or not, right? So, and also this business analysis stage, where you decide upon the product concept and marketing strategy, where like you think about the cost incurred and how much will be the sales expected, what will be the profit out of this, right? And then comes the product development stage. So this is the actual product development, and up to this point, many new product concepts, they may exist only in word description in the form of patents or maybe a rough prototype, right? So however, if the product concept passes these all business tests, right? So then it reaches this product development test, and obviously it may take the R&D team to kind of develop one or more physical versions of the product, and then really actually go ahead to the commercialization stage. So in this commercialization, this is the final thing where you push these things to the customer, right? So maybe you may have to consider many factors when it reaches that commercialization stage, especially the timing, right? If the economy is down, it might be wise to wait until the following year to launch the product, right? So it all depends on like what kind of product you are going to push, right? And, or else like where the new product should be launched in a single location or in a region or in a particular country or international market. So all these things will be decided in this commercialization stage. So ultimately, this is applicable for any new product. So whether it is something in AI and data science or whether it is in any other domain, right? So ultimately, you need to have certain product development analytics, which will help you in verifying whether whatever you're doing is in the right way or not, right? So a variety of analytical tools can be used to verify the product concepts, helping the developers to kind of test, learn, and adjust, and again redesign the product and also this whole launch process, right? So in addition to that, you have this informed product decision making, where analytics will make use of this decision making more kind of objectified, reliable, and kind of faster, right? So obviously it requires or it involves certain intuition, which is based on experience or expertise, and also that definitely still plays a valuable role in product development. And uh, like basically in the when it comes to objective analytics, even that also you need to keep in mind, right? So and another thing, say product progress measurement, like how whether these features whatever you were earlier decided, are these things working or not. So definitely in a nutshell, I can say that definitely analytics play a crucial role in all these process, right? So whether it is for developing new product strategy or identifying the market segments, or how do you deepen the customer relationship, or how do you improve customer segmentation and targeting, for all these things this development analytics will help you, right? So especially this is more relevant for small and medium scale enterprises, and entrepreneurs usually face very difficult challenges in accessing and analyzing relevant data. So on one hand, you have limited digital skills by management, and sometimes uh, there might be certain misperceptions on the actual risk and benefit which is deriving from the adoption of these recent digital technologies, right? And there's also the other side, I should say. Some companies believe that the moment you have this AI and data science into your thing, you are going to succeed. Or in sometimes the moment people think that the moment you have a lot of data, you're going to succeed. But these are kind of misperceptions or misconception, I would say, because maybe something which had worked in one domain need not work in the other domain, right? So ultimately, when you're talking about analytics, you need to choose the right analytic team, which means that obviously people should know how to do this programming and how to get a good grasp of statistics, and also they need to know what is realistic for a startup, right? So usually it is said that an experienced data scientist who have experience in say any specific domain such as deep learning, all these things, and you would have published a lot of things, everything looks very good in paper, but he or she may not have the level of industry experience needed for a particular startup, right? So sometimes the ground reality is completely different. From a theoretical perspective, it might look very rosy, but as you actually really start doing it, you may have a lot of hiccups, right? Next thing is collecting the right data. So I'll tell you an example. One of my friend, what he did is he started a startup in the domain of biotechnology, and he assumed, or he know that he has a lot of data, so he assumed that with that data he can make a lot of profit, right? But unfortunately, even with that much data, he couldn't come up with anything much viable or much sensible out of that, and unfortunately he need to shut down that particular company. So collecting the right data, and also not all the time you have, it makes sense to say that the more data you have, you will be able to get more analytics. It may not be right all the time, right? And also you need to make sure that certain decision you make early, that is what kind of technological stack you are going to make use, right? So that is kind of a foundation. The moment you decide, I'm going to with this particular database and this one, right? So after jumping into that, and if you're halfway, it's not a wise decision to change that, right? So whether should I go for a traditional SQL like database, or should I go for a NoSQL database like MongoDB, or any of these things, right? So these kind of technological stacks we should clearly identify, because sometimes people have a feeling that okay, if I use NoSQL databases, then I'm going to achieve more. It is not like, it all depends on what kind of data you're going to ingest and what kind of deliverables or what kind of goal you're trying to achieve. It all depends on that. And coming to the measuring your result, right? So any big companies you observe, they have a huge analytic teams which can measure how relevant a post is to a user. If you take about any social networking platform, uh, like whether this particular post is interesting to the customer or to interesting to the user, right? So all this is basically done using because of the constant measuring of this analytics, right? So a common mistake in this case is having too many metrics. So you may have say 12 or 20 different metrics, and sometimes if the team doesn't know how do you balance between these multiple metrics and measurements, then it will be very difficult to kind of focus on the goal which you are trying to achieve, right? So like any other team, this team also needs to have a clear direction. And of course, in any startup, you need to find supportive investors. And another very good option is often do this kind of hackathon. Like often it is very valuable to know what kind of things correlate with users, say signing up for your site or making a purchase. So all these things in its early development. Sometimes you analyze the data and conclude that users who have done some in a certain way are more likely to be repeated users, right? So maybe none of your teammates would have thought about such a thing, but if you are kind of going for a kind of hackathon thing, definitely there'll be a lot of people involved in that, and something out of the box will come out of that, which will clearly give a competitive edge to the company. One example I would like to cite here is a few years back, Netflix has conducted a similar thing. And from that, even now, they make use of that algorithm, which was proposed by the winner of that contest. Right? So that is definitely a good thing for any startup. You invest a little, do a hackathon, and you may get a lot of returns out of that. Right? Another aspect, the various different AI business categories. So I'm not going to explain each of those. Each of these things, definitely, I'm sure you would have seen either while doing a project or while reading about it. Right? So you can think about all these customer segmentation or risk analytics, or when you think about natural language processing, you have a lot of business categories, especially when it comes to regional language processing. Things like if you want to process something in Telugu, or if you want to process something in Hindi, still we haven't achieved much. Right? Or else if you think about computer vision, things like motion detection, right? Where you don't have any human being sitting and watching the visuals. Instead of that, you can just write a program, and the program will do the rest of the things for you. And in addition to that, one of the very significant thing is RP, or robotic process automation, where you have like you trigger certain responses, and you can communicate with these digital systems. Also, it can even be used to create a virtual workforce, right? All these things which you see, which are kind of auto-filling data, or using uh, some robotic process automation. You create a robot or software to collect, interpret, and extract knowledge and information to make transactions in the same way human beings do. Right? And in addition to that, speech recognition is also another larger domain. So these are the business categories in AI, I would say. Right? Now, I would like to put some tips for aspiring entrepreneurs in AI and data science. Although adoption of AI and machine learning for the enterprise might be still in its early days, the technology that has matured enough for entrepreneurs to kind of start gathering inspiration and also evaluating opportunities for these potential applications. So every day, the processing capabilities of these technology, they are increasing, right? So understanding the business problem you're solving is most important, like equally important as your algorithms. Most of the time what happens is, as a technology specialist or as a technology man, I'll be focusing more on the technology, but I may miss what exactly is the problem I'm facing, right? So you may have solutions to solve your problem. So uh, saying something about AI for healthcare or AI for sales is not nearly specific enough. While you can uh, create something out of these things, but clearly, will they achieve what you want to try achieve? That you need to rethink again. Another thing, is the market ready to support your solution, right? So for example, if you're thinking about healthcare or manufacturing or agriculture, you need to understand how much of the data is actually digitalized or how much is not structured, right? So based on these things only, you should decide what should be the idea, what I want to incubate and kind of uh, make into a product, right? So or else maybe are there any regulatory hurdles to overcome regarding the collection of the data? All these things you may have to think in mind before you start putting an idea for applying this AI in data science, right? So and another aspect is, even if AI is very brilliant, your product still needs a great user experience, right? It's the right workflow, or like you need to have a very robust reporting tools, right? So you will win in these situations not because of your AI superiority, but because of the end-to-end product. So most of the time, what I found is UG or PG students, when they come to me, they always want to work in data science, but none of them are really interested, or very few are really interested in actually kind of building a very good web interface or building a very good app, right? So which can actually bring these things onto the customer, right? So because of this too much hype over this thing, sometimes we just forget that your product definitely needs a great user experience, right? So ultimately this requires building more than a ML product or more than an AI product. So definitely collaboration and coordination is required for like across different front end and back end engineers and UX designers, right? So we'll quickly take a short break again for 1 minute, and then maybe we'll move to the conclusion part. Just a second. So what we have seen is, we have seen uh, entrepreneurship and data science, and what are the things you need to just keep in mind if you are planning for one. Right? All right. So usually, those who are actually working in data science or AI, most of the time, what they do is, like, they come to us, they say, I want to work with this particular data set and I want to kind of do this, right? So so imagine that somebody has implemented something on, say, random forest or something in deep learning. So most of the time, they may not be able to explain how their model functions, or what is so crucial, or should I go for another model, right? So definitely, if you are competent enough to code, and if you can kind of explain your findings, then that is fine. But if that is not happening, if you are not able to explain why something is happening and not the other way around, then it doesn't matter like how skilled you are at coding, right? So ultimately, that is the main thing you need to look into whenever you are developing a product or whenever you're doing in a project, right? So how is the model which I'm doing, or should I go for another one, or what is the reason why I have chosen this particular model and not anything else, right? So these are the kind of research aspects which you need to incorporate if you want to go for a kind of successful product. And also you should be able to explain what exactly, or what are the variables which are kind of impacting the corresponding output what I'm getting, right? So in other words, I could put it in this way: which variables are trying to consider. So maybe for a common man, he may not understand what is an R square or P value, all these things, right? So even a customer may not understand, right? So what exactly is the data saying? That you should be able to tell like a story, right? So then obviously in those cases you would be definitely able to come up with some novel aspects or a novel idea which can do that, right? So having said that, there are a lot of tools available. So usually I tell an example. If you take a knife can have a lot of different use cases, right? So but the how you use for that particular knife for a particular purpose, from that only you will be able to do something creative, and at the same time also you can do something destructive as well. So in the data science domain, you have a huge list of tools and frameworks available. Now, learning all these tools and frameworks is not going to happen in a lifetime. So if you are good in at least one or two tools or one or two frameworks, that should be more than sufficient to kind of start your journey in data science and do something really productive in that, right? So most of the startups, they inadvertently they are involved in data analytics without necessarily deploying the latest technologies and tools, because you'll be surprised with that. Because most of the time, if your data is structured and even if you have huge quantity of data, still a normal SQL based databases can give you the required analytics, right? So there are a lot of vast array of analytic resources available, as I've shown here, and the nature or the stage and complexity of a business depends largely on the sophistication of analytical tools required for it, right? It is really challenging, especially if you are unnecessarily involving some framework or technology, if you can do it in a much simpler way in other ways, right? So always this should be that whatever is your perspective, or whatever is the context of your data, and whatever is your objective which you want to achieve, based on that you need to select your technology stack. That's the point I want to convey from this slide. So as you have more data, then obviously you need to again rework on data, and you need to think how you can scale. And for that, now you have a lot of things like ML ops, or machine learning operations, or data operations, or data engineering, where it will help you in achieving what exactly you want to scale, right? There are a lot of challenges. So some of this things, for example, it all depends on what kind of data you are giving. So there is another saying in machine learning. It is always referred as garbage in and garbage out. So your model and your analysis, 99% of the time, it completely depends on what data you are feeding in, right? So if you are having a poor data set, obviously your analysis is going to be even more poorer, right? So uh, and also there are a lot of common things, like for example with respect to data accuracy, right? So if you are thinking about the data accuracy while collecting the data itself, you may have a lot of errors, right, or a lot of issues, right? So which means that even if you have some duplicate values in your data set, all this can cause your model to kind of behave differently, and you may not have a realistic model, right? And another aspect is you should be able to reproduce all these things whatever you do, because you might have different customers. So in all these different scenarios, it should clearly give what exactly you are intending to kind of generate, right? So reproducibility, it also applies to machine learning frameworks. You would have noticed this thing. For example, if you're working with TensorFlow and you get a new update of Python, and sometimes you may have some issues with TensorFlow because you have some framework dependency issues, right? Another common thing is regarding data drift. For example, if you want to do certain kind of analysis, say from news articles. So you want to divide the news articles into three different buckets. One is politics, the other one is business, the other one is technology. Imagine that you are going to train your model with some old data, say from 20th century, right? So then definitely I'm sure it will not perform good with the current this thing. So obviously, for example, if you have a word like smartphone in the headline of some newspaper, right? So then if you have trained your model with that old data, it will not even understand it, able to understand what exactly is smart and phone, right? Because you have used older data. And another aspect just I mentioned is regarding scaling. So scaling is directly related to this MLOps, which itself is a huge domain, which is having a lot of significance now. And also, it all depends on what kind of objective you are trying to look into. Right? As a product, you even if a single team is responsible for a machine learning, building a machine learning model, there might be others also who are working within that company, right? So these teams may have a different idea of what is a successful model, because their perspective is going to change. For example, imagine that you're building a model which can identify defective materials of a car, right? So which means that to understand this, how it play out in practice, let's say the product manager, uh, he basically wants to reduce the number of defective products. So he basically reduce whatever that is sent to the customer. You want to reduce that, but the ultimately maybe the management, they want the the revenue to be increased by 30%. But ultimately, you are actually trying to do this thing. In effect, it is actually affecting some other goal or objective, right? So ultimately, it is good to have like what exactly you are trying to achieve. That you should be able to define, and if you're working towards that common goal, obviously you'll not have any hiccups during this implementation, or during even after launching that product, right? So ultimately, the scenario right now is very good for AI and data science, and especially if you think about the Indian scenario, you have a lot of things happening. So why I say that, I'll just quickly wind up with that. So if you think about these things, these are the number of patents being filed in the area of AI. So the international patent filing grew by 4% in the year 2020, and more than 70% of say technology patents filed in India related to one or more emerging technology domains, and AI is one among that, right? And uh, so India is ranked 8th globally in terms of AI patent filing. And also, if you think about AI research papers, we are ranked 4th. So it's a lot of things are happening all across the country. So it's the right time you also can think about those things, because AI patent filing in India will definitely maintain an upward trajectory. The reason is you have growing importance for patent filing and also for protecting intellectual property. And so definitely this kind of filing will continue across diverse application areas, applying AI into different fields, right? So, for the final concluding remarks, so definitely the technology will influence whether the individual decide to set up in the first place, and may define their quality of life if they choose to do so. So entrepreneurship researchers themselves will even be able to use the technology to kind of develop new theoretical insights on social and economic phenomena. So it's a kind of all encompassing and exponential nature of AI. Because of that only it's possible, right? So definitely one thing is, as I mentioned, finding and understanding the problem is more important than the solution. More data doesn't always mean more insights, and research and innovation in data science both should go hand in hand, right? And the real change in the real challenge in machine learning sometimes, or most of the time, comes in operating the model. So that's why earlier I mentioned about some of the challenges in data science. Over a period of time, if something changes, then like you may have to again tweak the model and make sure that it still works fine, right? So uh, that's pretty much from my side. So if you have any questions, I'll be kind of happy to answer.